I think what makes you the best listing agent that you can be is to hear what other people do and say, oh, wow, I don't do that, but that's awesome.
Hey everyone, welcome to Core 90 training here with the community at eXp Realty, the greatest real estate brokerage on the planet. We're so glad you're joining us today, and we have a very special presentation. I can't wait to get out of the way here. We have the love of my life, by the way, happy Valentine's Day, babe, Lexy Sanchez, hosting a panel of superstar listing agents today. And need I say more, this is obviously a listing market coming up. We're so excited to be talking about this. And it's really, really always great to have top level people. So without any further chitter chatter from me, I'm going to bring Lexy Sanchez up here to introduce the amazing agents she has on the panel today. Hey, hon.
Hi, guys. Well, happy Valentine's Day. I think every day is a day to celebrate love, but today in particular is kind of a special opportunity. And I feel really fortunate to have the job of hosting this panel because these are all people that I love and respect. And when we thought about doing a panel to talk about listings, these were the folks that first jumped into my mind because I know that they all bring something special and unique to the work that they do, and they excel. And that's what I wanted everybody to hear. When we think about taking listings, sometimes we get intimidated. It's really can be stressful, especially in this market where there's a lot of competition and not a lot on the market, quite frankly. So, that idea of walking into someone's house and taking a listing might be intimidating to some of you, but I wanted you guys to hear this panel in particular so that you could see it's not art. I mean, it is art. It's not a science. There's no one answer. There's no one formula. It's a bunch of different things. And so without further ado, I want our guests here to just give us a quick little lowdown, where they're located, what their names are, and how long they've been in the business. Let's start with Heather Rich, because she's the first one that popped up on my screen here. Heather, give us a quick intro.
Okay. Boy, I hate being first. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. I am in the central Willamette Valley. It is foggy. You would never find me if you were looking right now. I've been doing this wonderful, wonderful gift of a job for 20 plus years now. What else do you need to know? It's early, you guys.
That's good. So she's a teacher of realtors. She's got a big teaching gig and she's teaching people how to do this crazy thing we call real estate. And I can't think of anybody that has more knowledge or experience, honestly. Heather's kind of seen it, done it all, managed all of the cats, herded all of them in a million different directions. So she's
I've been mentoring new agents since 2013, but I've been teaching pre-license since 8 years now.
Great.
Well, herding cats, herding monkeys. Yep. Yeah, monkeys is more like it. Yeah.
And we have Marco Sanchez. Marco, give us a little lowdown on what you're doing.
Hi, my name is Marco Sanchez. I have the Sanchez team. I'm in the Willamette Valley. Been licensed for 4 years.
Awesome. And he's a beast. Like this guy takes, listings like he's eating lunch every day. It's just like listing.
How could you not? Look at that smile.
It's awesome. And we also have Sara Shatto, specialist and an idol of mine from when I started real estate because she's so awesome, such an incredible person and a mega lister for sure. Sara, give us your story.
Hi there, Sara Shatto, Willamette Valley. I've been selling for 17 years. I say that, but really I am a caregiver and a rescuer, and this career feeds my soul big time. So every market just requires an adjustment, but it always requires just loving on people.
Love it. Perfect for today's message, right?
Exactly.
Scott Gephart, another big time role model for me. He is like a lead master, but again, he's done everything, owned his own brokerage, just incredible all around superstar in real estate. Scott, give us a little bit about you.
Still working on that, but filling those shoes. Anyways, been licensed for 20 years. I've done a little bit of everything in real estate. I was a title officer for 3 years. I was a lender for a couple of years, then got into real estate full time. Had my own brokerage. Was #1 listing broker out of everybody for a long time. And our company was, we had a lot of good brokers on there, including like Mr. Joe Yates, if he's on here, he's part of that. My experience comes from listings has been my kind of key focus all the time, but I always joke around saying I do a lot more buyer sides than I do listing sides because my listings are, my whole plan is to master the marketing so I can do 2 to every one. But been doing it a long time, and it's funny, I've done a lot of notes. I've done a lot of systems over the years, and I was going through everything going, my goodness, man, I'm nuts. Like I have too many details and too much information. It's way simpler now. What I used to do and what I do now is probably very different. But anyways, that's that.
Actually, I kind of love that. We'll come back to that because stuff changes, right? I mean, the world changes, real estate changes, not only in kind of the legal things that we have to pay attention to, but just in behavioral patterns of buyers and sellers. And so that's an interesting thing. We'll come back to that, Scott.
Yeah.
And now in Colorado, we have Siobhan Celusta. Is it Celusta? Is that
Celesta?
Celusta? Okay, sorry about that. So tell us a little bit about your history in real estate.
Okay, well, I'm Siobhan. I've been in real estate for about 7 years now. So not long, but I feel like I've learned so much. And I like that you said that, Lexi, because I feel like what I was doing in year 1 and 2 is so different from 3 and 4. And now this year, it's just evolved. I feel like I've evolved along with the market and really started to, hone my listing skills. And I plan on learning a lot today to make him even better. So I'm excited.
Awesome. I'm so glad you're here. And also, she's another one of my role models. She is such a cool person, years in the Air Force, fighter pilot, just like, holy cow, she's amazing. Want to be her when I grow up for sure. And then last but not least, Craig McHugh, who's also in Colorado. Obviously, he and Siobhan are in the same place, which is rare that we have a panel with people in the same location. So it's kind of cool. Craig, tell us about you, because you're not all that long in real estate either, right?
Nope, 2016 I got in, and sort of a second career for me was in IT for 18 years and then goofed around for 10 years, and now I work for tuition. So trying to put kids through college. So really kind of fell in love with it, and just have really learned a lot, grown a lot. Fell in love with training and teaching and mentoring. I've trained over 60 agents and mentored over 60 agents now. And so it's a great way for me to just keep getting better at what I do, because you got to actually be able to stand up in front of, people and not look like a complete idiot. So, it became it's really kind of my thing now. I love training and teaching and mentoring. So, and I same as Scott too, like, man, going back through, I've got reams of things that I've come up with, and listing presentations and this and that and PowerPoint presentations. And now I'm from the keep it simple, stupid school of everything. And so I pretty much keep it simple, and we'll go through that.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. And, you also touched on something that is a common thread here with this panel. And that is that I think at a certain level, each one of our panelists are educators. Their focus has been on mentoring, teaching, being a role model for other agents in their area. And that, I believe, makes you a better agent, right? I mean, we know that when the old adage is, teaching makes you a better student. You learn more when you teach. And I think that's so true in real estate. And it also keeps you relevant when you're having to stay up on all of the things that are going on, new not only technologies, but just new methodologies and new attitudes towards selling real estate. Sharing that really helps, and staying on top of that makes you top of your game. So let's start. I asked our panelists today, you guys, two main questions that I wanted us to focus on. But if you guys have questions, please pepper them in. And then I have a long list of other questions that I just want to hear answers to from this group, because they have really great insight. And my goal here is to make everybody feel really inspired and comfortable going out and just going listing crazy. Because we know that if you have listings, you kind of rule the market. From listings, you can get buyers. Yes, you can get listings from buyers, but usually it works the other way around. Maybe somebody can talk about that a little bit. But the two main questions that I wanted everybody to talk about today were whether or not you use a listing presentation. So that's the first one. And then just some of the details and specifics around what you guys do. What's your routine when you are going to a listing appointment? What do you do before? What are some of the main things that you do during those appointments? Kind of your staple elements, because I know every appointment, every potential client is different, but how you guys handle it. And I'm sure there are certain like little core elements that you include. And then what you do after, because like anything we do, honestly, in life, but especially in real estate, follow-up is key. If you don't take the listing in the moment, it all hinges on your follow-up game. So I'd love for you guys to talk about that. So, some details around before, during, and after listing appointments. But first, let's start with whether or not you guys use a formal listing presentation. And I kind of smile when I bring up this topic because it's hotly debated all across real estate. Some people have lots of opinions about what's right and what's wrong. I'm a firm believer that the only right answer is what works for you. And so I'd love for you guys to talk about your experience here. And even if you're doing something different now, Craig, you kind of alluded to that. What changed? How did it change? And why did it change? So who wants to start?
I can go.
All right, awesome.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like I have a little bit of both, and I feel like I have the solution for everybody. It's the best way to do it, in my opinion, but you're probably gonna have 6 different opinions here, or it'll be a little bit of everything. But because I'm super detailed and freak about details and not forgetting things or having a total process for what I do. So I literally have even part of my listing. I have a written listing presentation. It's not so much something I would sit there and read to somebody or give them. It's my process. It's like I wrote a speech, right? But it literally was 20 pages long when I wrote it out. And I had somebody type it up for me. And then it's broken down into percentages, and it's really crazy, actually. But it comes down to, just basically setting yourself up. Like I have in my system, I'll have a pre-listing checklist. That's 25 things. And it sounds crazy, but what I'm getting at is like I have a super detailed process, but I've written it out, and it goes in a certain area. It's very specific to every word of it. But then I used to make everybody memorize it. So like for me, I don't take anything besides a 5x5. I use a 555 CMA that I do. And I have it memorized. I know the process. I know the procedure. I know the questions. But the one thing I always thought was really neat is when I go to a listing presentation, my first thing I ask him, is there anything other than price than you'd like to talk about? And if they say no, I don't talk about anything. I say, okay, great, let's do the paperwork. Done. Like I don't talk about things they don't want to talk about. Because I've seen more people mess up a listing presentation for that reason, not knowing what the client is really interested in, and you're assuming they want to know all these things about you and everything you do, and some of them don't. You've already won before you got there. But also that's part of, I think, the pre-listing package and what you do to set it up. That there's way too much time to go over all that stuff. But like sending them things to prepare, or I send them the seller's property disclosures and all kinds of other things that they can fill out. And if I go there and they've filled everything out, it's a done deal. Like I've never not taken the listing. Send them personal notes.
So Scott, once you have the appointment set up, you send by what, email, a pre-listing package?
Yeah, I
that
used to actually drop them off.
Okay,
I
sure.
drop them off. And I also, it's crazy. Like I said, it's long. I would actually do a ton of homework because I'm really, really into researching. I'd know more about them and the property than they probably did. And then I would actually run by there because I was always out doing this, and I would take snapshots of the house. But now, I mean, that was a long time ago, right? Like that's why things have changed. Now I don't need to do that. There's pictures of their property all over the internet.
Sure.
But I would even have their picture of their property and make it like personal on those documents that I'd send to them. But it was a total pre-setup, right? And then all the wording was getting them to be thinking about the questions that I was going to be answering, or actually getting to think it through. And then they would already be answered. I wouldn't even have to ask them before you get there. So it's like,
so you're really, almost handling objection.
It's a deep thing. I realized. I was reading through all my stuff this morning going, oh my gosh. I mean, I put so much time into all this stuff. I wonder if it even works. But it worked because I carried over 100 listings at one point. Myself, not my company.
Yeah.
Our team. And we dominated the listings by far. And you know what? It works really well because then it's like what Jake Rockwell, he's doing that right now in Southern Oregon. You can't go anywhere without seeing a sign. So they thought we were the biggest and greatest, even though we were a smaller company, because they saw our signs everywhere. But one thing that I want to say before I forget it, because I will, going through all my stuff, some of the things was like redundant. Like I had a program where this is part of my listing presentation, if I was competing, was to talk about the things that we think are important, which is like tell them about the team, our track record, and then pretty much the communication part. Because almost all listings, if you're talking, especially if somebody had their property listing in the past or something, always the reason they're mad was the communication was bad. It's always the reason.
Yeah.
And so we talk about so one of the things that I did was we have a system that they can log into as a client, and they can see the tasks that are done daily. So I had a checklist, or several. There's different processes where I talk about how there's 180 steps to listing and selling your home. And this really just made me think of the thing that's going on right now with us fighting for our commissions.
Yeah.
It really shows them, if they want to see it. I would say, hey, I'm going to communicate with you no matter what, once a week. What day and time do you want that to be? And if I said, or I'll call you when there's something important, and we can make this easy breezy, because that's how I like to do it. And they tell me how they want me to communicate, when and how. Yeah. And then you just stick to that.
I love that. Yeah, I think setting the expectation with your client for communication is really important, because
but if they had a question about what do you do, I had that all set out. And then they could every day. And then I talk about how, well, since we have a team, I go, it's like, when you build a house, you don't just hire one guy, you hire a general contractor, then you have all these different subs that do everything, right? I go, that's the same with the team. We have experts that might do one or two things each, and they are experts in their field. Right. And so you're getting, and then there's little like hints or jokes along the way. It's like, man, you'd think you'd be paying a lot more for us, right? With all that. And they'd be like, yeah, wow. It's like you start to eliminate. I never talk about pricing, or I talk about pricing, but I don't ever talk about commissions unless they just won't get off it right off the bat. We wait to the end, because by the end, they are happy to pay. And honestly, most of my career, this is going to be bad. I've got 3.5% on the listing side.
Yeah.
So, and I just closed one 3 weeks ago. That was 3.5, $700,000 house.
Yep.
So when you, anyways, that kind of started with the foreclosure market and the short sales and things like that, because of the work that was on that side of it, because we did tons of it. But so the presentation's like kind of really, it's more psychological about setting them up, but then not setting them up to agree to list with you. Yes, they are, but it's also showing them the value full bore of why, like, wow, like I thought it's a really great way to show them, because then it gets them to ask the right questions. That I know, and I know Jeff is the master of, getting people to say yes. And that's what you're trying to do in this situation. But I always felt like, and I would even tell them right from the front, I said, you know what? I think the national average is something like 60 something percent will list with the first person they talk to. I go, honestly, for me, our team, it's about 95%. Usually it's only a personality thing that I don't get the listing. You just
Yeah.
don't like me.
Sure.
Other than
And that
that,
happens. That
it's
happens for sure.
It does
So,
happen.
Marco, what do you do? Do you have a presentation and you're muted, by the way? Oh, no, you're not. Maybe not. There you go.
Okay. No presentation on my end. Really, when I'm gonna take a listing, I like to, if it's over the phone to get the listing appointment, I will set the appointment. I will confirm the appointment the day of, and I usually text them or call them and say, "Hey, I will be there at this time today," versus asking, "Hey, are we still good or are we confirmed?" So
Love
I
that.
always tell them I'll be there at this time. I show up. All I bring with me is my listing agreement. No presentation at all.
Yep.
Um,
And I mean, and so then how do you know, I mean, obviously, if you're not presenting with a formal presentation, how are you approaching the conversation then?
well, the biggest thing is when I come in, my first impression matters. I try to connect with the client. Once once we connect, I find out what's the why. Why are you looking to sell? Where are you looking to get to? Once I unlock the why, then that's when we close the deal by getting the listing agreement signed. So I like to talk about what the client wants, what he's looking to do. And that way I know how to handle the objections.
I love it
Because every
because I mean,
every objection is going to be handled different
right.
if they have certain goals that they want to do. Maybe it's the money, maybe it's that, maybe they're just having to move, or an emergency, or love, whatever it is. That's my biggest thing is finding out the why.
Right. And that's an important piece for most people. And a lot of times I find realtors forget that because they're like, a sell is a sell is a sell. You need to sell your house or we're going to list it. But that's not how it works. Some people have a different focus. They may not have a timeline, but they have a very specific financial requirement, or they need to sell fast and the finances don't match, you know, and it's your job to kind of articulate how those things work together or don't, right? Because price and time impact how you handle the listing significantly. So I love this. Like your main focus is figure out why they're selling, and then you can approach how you would go about doing that, right?
Right. And same like Scott, I don't discuss commission until the end. I just tell them, hey, this is what my fee is going to be, and I don't negotiate my fee. And I think that's more on just on my end, on myself, because if I start negotiating my fee, then I feel like that's going to bring just my confidence down. I guess
Yeah.
it's just on myself. So I stick to that number, and that's my number. And if you don't want to work with me, then I always tell them you get what you pay for. So you're more than welcome to look around.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm going to put a pin in that because we're going to talk about commission and those objections, because I know that's one of the toughest ones, and realtors are so sweetly guilty, if that makes any sense, of being willing to knock down their commission like almost instantaneously, or even starting with, well, usually I go at 6, but I could do for you guys 5. You know, we do that all the time. And that psychology is a tough hurdle to get over, but I think it's really important if you want to be successful with taking listings that you feel comfortable handling those objections. So we're definitely going to get to that. Sarah, tell us about your process with presentation or no presentation.
Well, that's a tough one because each case is individual, but I do walk in with an agency pamphlet, of course, if I don't know the client.
Yeah.
And my sole goal when I walk through the door is to make a connection. Buying and selling real estate are both in the top 10 most stressful things people do. I know that from my psychology degree education. And usually there's more than that going on in their life. Maybe they're moving because there was a death in the family, or there was a divorce, or a job relocation. So I kind of let the client talk for the most part to find out what their goals are, similar to Marco. Yeah, I make a connection. I tour their home. I have information with me that I can pull out depending on what their questions are. Some people like to see like statistics written as opposed to me spewing it out. So I bring information that I can leave with them depending on how things go and what they're interested in. You know, if you know ahead of time that your client is like an engineer, they're more likely to want, you know, stats and hard copies of paperwork and things like that. So I kind of, I take it as it comes. And my goal is, of course, to take the listing, but I also, there are some clients I wouldn't want to represent. So I don't go into these appointments with a desperate mindset. I let them know that, you know, if we're a good fit for one another, then we can work together. But I also put forward an air of caring, I think. And when people know that you care, they're more likely to trust you. And these are huge financial decisions people are making. And so trust is huge.
Yeah. So it's your presentation, so to speak, is adaptive according to the connection you make, the needs of the client, their circumstances, et cetera. Right?
Yes, I could have said all that quickly like you just did, but
No, it's better the way you said it. But I mean, but I think that's true, is that sometimes, you know, my position has been that a formal presentation sometimes just feels dry. It feels rote. It feels inauthentic. I mean, the thing that I've heard from all of you guys so far is you got to listen to the client first and foremost. Otherwise, but you know, but those agents that walk in with this presentation, they're like, sit down, shut up, and listen to me. Instead of, I'm going to sit down and maybe prompt you with a question, and then I'm going to listen, right? Because how do I know how to answer their questions if I'm not listening?
I found that if I listen to their story, I almost don't have to ask questions. But at the end, when the questions I need to have answered aren't answered, that's when I ask. And I'll pepper in bits about myself and my experience, but mostly I make it about them. And I walk into any appointment or public space with just love.
Yeah.
And I know some people think that's a woo-woo, but I've been a top agent just from that mindset because I love people, and it's.
I totally agree. And you know, what's really fun to hear is like, so Scott has the same philosophy, but has a slightly different approach, and that he is, when he can, he front loads the information so that all of that is out of the way, so that when he gets to the appointment, he can just have a conversation and answer only the questions that are left, instead of spending 2 hours of time and frustration and you know, honestly, potentially confusion with a client by spending too much time there. And you really can get yourself stuck in an uncomfortable situation by answering questions or providing information that only causes problems in the client's brain. Right. So I love that you guys are all saying connection is most important. How do you provide information? When you provide information, slightly different. I love it. Craig. Oh, sorry. Go, Sarah.
Just one more thing. I feel like the formal presentation almost takes some of the humanity out of the process for the sellers. So
yeah, and I think it depends too, because I know there are certain things. I mean, like you brought up, you know, if you're working with an engineer, for example, you know, some of us know and understand DISC, right? The behavioral patterns that we have in our communication styles in that professional environment. And so Sarah's talking about how you talk to a high C, someone who's very computational, someone like an engineer, is going to feel and sound, and the information they're going to want is really different than somebody who's a high S, who needs more of that connection, who needs more time and conversation in the softer, more squishy zones, right? So, but and sometimes you find yourself talking to maybe two people. You have one high C and one S. Now we're getting really into the deep weeds of relationship and connection building in listings, which is why I think all of our panelists are going to tell you blah, but it depends on who I'm talking to, right? Because that's inevitable. Okay, Siobhan and Craig, tell us about you guys and how you approach it. I know you guys are different, so take turns.
And I'm going to take what you just said, Lexi, a minute ago, is like connection. How do you create that connection? For me, especially at this point in my career, that connection could start years ago.
Yep.
What am I doing on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, on an annual basis to foster that relationship? Because most of my business, and I think for a lot of us, most of my business is now from referrals. Whether it's my existing client that's like, hey, I'm ready to move, I'm ready to sell, I'm ready to buy another investment property, or it's like, hey, you should talk to Craig and Kelly. So for me, it's like I send out 900 HomeBot reports, 900 plus, 120 now, I think, HomeBot reports. We do quarterly pop-by gifts. We stay in touch with them. We call them. I text them. How are you? My wife's amazing. We send out hundreds of birthday cards for them and anniversary cards, birthday cards for them and their children. And when there's important things that happen in their life and tragedy strikes in their life, we send them a gift. We engage with them. So a lot of times if you do that, by the time you're there about ready to push that doorbell, like you've already done the groundwork, and now it's just about tell me where you're at. What do you want to do? So that's kind of for me, the big picture of groundwork. And then secondly, I'll get prepared. I'll run a CMA on their place. I'll check the numbers. I know a number in my head, what I think is this house will sell for. I go in the house. I don't do a listing presentation. I used to have some badass listing presentations. Like, you said it too, like, okay, y'all just sit down, strap in. This will only take about 90 minutes for me to get through how great I am.
Nightmare appointment.
Yeah. And the more you interrupt me, the longer this will take, So we're not doing. And then I finally realized, like, this is stupid. I'm not doing this anymore. And I got to the point where it just felt like it was just hindering me, really.
Sure.
So I actually did a Ninja installation with amazing Larry Kendall. If you guys haven't ever done that or read his book, Ninja Selling is amazing. And he just like stopped talking, asked questions. And so I've just sort of cobbled together over the years all these really great questions. And I carry this little blue folder with me when I come in, and I have a CMA, just a one-line CMA, which I rarely show to clients because it looks like an accountant threw up. It's just pure numbers.
Right.
So and then there's about 20 questions, and it forces me to just shut the hell up, like ask a question and listen. And then see where that goes. Sometimes you'll get one question in, and it could be, you're just going down a rabbit hole with them and why they're here and what's going on. So, it forces me to shut up, listen. One of the questions in here is like, why didn't you use the guy you used last time? By the way, 80+% people don't. And the number one answer universally, I think Scott touched on this, is they didn't communicate. Like they didn't listen to me. And so it's like, okay, I need to stop talking and start listening. So these questions are great. For me, I never talk about a number. I want them to say the number first. If I say the number first, then I've got almost a 100% chance of it not being where they thought it was going to be.
Right. You went from 50-50 to 100% being wrong no matter what, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like they have a number. And a lot of people are like, well, what do you think? And I'll say, well, you must have something, what's the number you need to get to where you need to be next? And, we all know, and I think for the longest time, I always assumed when I hit the door, like I was the only one that knew the number,
no.
Negating Zillow and Realtor and Trilio and, every other and another agent, their friend's daughter who's, in the business, they have a number in their dome. I want them to say it first.
Yeah.
And then I can come back with, okay, whether like, am I going to be like, oh, damn, like that's a great number. It's lower than what I thought. So
exactly.
be a hero. Or it's like, damn, like I don't know how we're ever gonna get to there. But then I
Right.
could bring in the CMA and like, okay, well, here's the numbers. This is just what's sold. How does that look in comparison to what you're thinking? And we can sort of land the plane a little bit just by narrowing them in on that number.
Right.
And short story, when I was a new agent, um, met a couple at an open house. They had their house listed for a long time. It finally went, fell out. We really hit it off. I knew everything then, had my CMA, had my number, go into their house, and it's like, how much? This house will sell for $725,000. I'm like, they were like, well, we really want 800. And I was like, no, no. We're not doing it. 725. And then we went back and forth and back and forth. And they were trying to tell me all the reasons why their house is worth $800,000. And I was like, nope, 725. So shook hands, left. Probably a week later, I see the house go back on the market with the same agent that listed it last time they overpriced. And guess what price it went on the market at?
725.
No, 800,000.
Oh, good. I was gonna have to go find those people now, all these years
Yeah,
later. They
I know. But here's the part that really sucked. Like, I lost the listing, right? It went on the market. It sat and sat and sat. Guess what price it sold at?
725.
725. And I was like, and then I realized like the number doesn't matter to me, right? I'm going to sell it for whatever you want to sell it within reason. But if it was $800,000, I'm going to show them the numbers. Like 725 is probably where it's at, but let's try it. Let's find out, right? And then we can make those adjustments and back it down over time. But
That's it.
I've already showed them what reality is. I want the listing first and foremost. And then we'll deal with reality of what the market tells them. And that's what I try and tell them in this my listing presentation is like, I am not the ultimate arbiter of what your house will sell for. The market is. The market is incredibly dynamic. It changes day to day. So someone could come in here and see an $800,000 house and be like, yep, this is it. Because those people that are out there looking at houses, they're the experts, not me. They've looked at everything in this price range, in this neighborhood. They're just waiting for the right house. It could be yours. But if the market is telling us otherwise, we're not getting offers, we're getting negative feedback, we're going to have to adjust the price.
Sure.
And I'll even sometimes, if they're really out there, bake it into like, how much do you think if we don't get 800, how much do you think we should reduce and how often? And shut your mouth. Shut your pie hole. Don't talk anymore until they give you a number. And then you can say, great, all right, we're going to do that. We're going to drop $5,000 a week until we find equilibrium with the market. Don't make it about me. Make it about the market.
That's great.
Trying to do all that. And then these questions and if you guys want, it's actually for a buyer and listing. I've done a video on it before on Core 90, but if anybody wants to see this, just either reach out to Jeff or reach out to me and I'll be glad to send it to you. It's just
That'd be great. That's your 20 questions, right?
There's about 50 questions on both sides. I actually do it as a buyer interview and then a listing interview.
I love it.
Yeah, it's
okay,
just
great.
To shut up.
Yeah. We'll post that. And also I didn't miss it. Scott, we had a request if you'd be willing to share your 180 things that agents do when they list a house. Are you willing to?
I'll share whatever.
We'll get that and we'll post that as well. And then you guys, as usual, my recommendation is, don't reinvent the wheel, but make the wheel your own. Like, take this list or these lists and look at them and then adapt them to whatever works with your style and your focus. And I'm sure that everybody here is willing for you to do that. It's not verbatim. It's, this is your own thing when you go into an appointment. So Heather, how about you? Talk to us about your approach on whether or not you use a presentation or not.
Well, quickly, energy is super, super important when you're talking to anyone. And I want to just point out a couple things. Marco, when you smile, you just light up. We need to take that good energy into those appointments. I just want to say that to get go. Even when you're on the phone with someone, guys, you got to pump up that energy. I don't care if you have a headache, you forgot to eat breakfast, you got to bring it. Okay. So next thing, as I'm listening, a couple things. One, yes, I bring a presentation. The 5 P's, proper preparation prevents poor performance. I go in to that appointment knowing everything I can about that seller, about the home, and the neighborhood, you guys. I go in knowing that I'm not going to get surprised when they ask me, well, why did the neighbor's house sell for more than what you're telling me? I'm going in with all of it. But then I pull in a little bit of what Sarah's talking about. I concentrate on them in the beginning. The worst thing you can do when you go to a listing appointment is walk in and sit your ass down. Oops, sorry, I'm filter.
Sit yourself down.
That is the worst thing you can do is walk in and sit down, especially with a stack of papers, because really what they want to know is 2 things. What's my home worth, and can you sell it? That's all they care about. They do not want you to sit there and talk about how great you are, how great your company is, all of your past sales. They really, okay, it's fine, but they really don't care. Do you think they've looked you up and checked you out before you got there? Yes, hell yes, they have. So going into that appointment, that preparation is super important, knowing that. But in regard to my actual presentation itself, that happens at the end. First, I'm talking about their why. I'm talking about their house. They're giving me the tour. They're showing it off. I'm asking them, what made this the one? When you bought this house, what made it the one? When we get into your question, I'll absolutely have a presentation. I have my initial agency disclosure, Sarah, of course. I usually email that first. Really important in Oregon, required. Secondly, though, I sit down with facts and that CMA, and they sign it there that day. We don't talk about commission. I just don't. I never have it come up. I'm sorry. We just cruise right past that question. This is what it is. If it has come up, I just say, oh, I'm sorry, so-and-so will do it for that. I'm absolutely not a discount broker. I'm a professional. You're getting the very best when you work with me in my group. And we cruise right past it. That CMA is probably the most important part of the presentation, and it doesn't need to be 20 pages long. It needs to have, I feel, at least a picture of each of your comps, because they've been driving around that neighborhood seeing those signs. They know that those homes have been on the market. They're going to be really impressed when you can show them what they actually sold for. That CMA presentation is really my main focus. And again, that's at the end. That's when we're coming together on price. Do I bring a presentation with me? I do, but I don't read it to them. The only thing I go over it with them is actually the actual CMA and see if they have questions about comps. But I keep it short, keep it simple. And no more, I have a rule, no more than 5 pages. The first page has a picture of their house. I may even drive by if I can't find one somewhere on the internet, but I have a picture of their house as the main page because I want them to know that their home is my main focus. So I didn't want to go too much more because I know you just asked one question. So
No, that's awesome. And Siobhan, how about you?
Oh, yeah. So one of the things just different from everyone else, because a lot of that is awesome. And I incorporate those things into my presentation, I really like to respect the seller's time. So if I'm given a time to be there, I'm there at that time. Tad and I are there most of the time, the 2 of us. And then if a lot of times they'll say, I'm free from 1 to 2, something like that. I am finished and wrapping up and not encroaching on their day. I just think, showing that respect from the very beginning is good practice. And it's my personality to read. I mean, I read personalities and emotions pretty well, so I can see people getting a little antsy or bored or excited. I feed off of those things too. And I think just, like you said, I was a fighter pilot. I wasn't. I was actually a search and rescue pilot, but it was a bigger plane.
Still crazy cool.
But one of the things I learned from that is, flying with a crew of 7, sometimes 9 people, you have a mission to get done, and you have 7, 9 personalities and, emotions. Everybody's so different. So you kind of have to figure out what's going to be most effective in your communication style with each of those people, and then as a group. And if you have Mr. and Mrs. Seller there together, most of the time who wears the pants, but you have to also cater to both of them. And with those different, one wants data, one wants the connection. So I think that's what's really great about Tad and I going to these together, because we're kind of able to feed off of the person who we most relate to. So that helps a lot. And then it just real quick, one of the first things I do when I get to the house, because I do a lot of preparation. I'm sure we're going to talk about that later, but I just ask the seller. I'm very introverted, so I don't feel comfortable doing this as it is. So if you're one of those people, I had somebody recommend to me one time, just when you get there, introduce yourself, set down your bag and your stuff and ask for a tour of the house. And that, takes what Sarah is saying, everybody's kind of saying, is let the seller do the talking. And then it lets you, as an introverted person, just kind of relax and breathe and take notes and really get into that mindset without feeling, overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's interesting. The tour, I think, is a critical element that people forget. And the reason I think it's so important, I mean, the reality is you can and you should sell any house, right? I mean, I've sold $70,000 houses and I've sold multi-million-dollar houses and literally everything in between. The house is the house is the house. It's a property. We understand that. We also know the meaning of it. But when you allow your seller to be the expert on their house, then they will allow you to be the expert of being the agent. And it creates a real clear delineation, like, okay, your house, great. I'm the agent. And I think it clarifies that, but it's respectful too. And I do try, because Sarah brought up, it's such an emotional thing and a huge financial transaction for people to sell a home. I really try to start neutralizing the language. This is really intentional, but I start out with the word home and I transition to the word house. And then I end up in my communication after I've taken the listing with property most of the time. And the reason why is I'm trying literally to help my clients emotionally make a separation, because that's what has to happen for them to be able to negotiate on every little element of that house, whether it's, and it starts in that appointment. And you have the opportunity in the appointment, in the way that you handle them, to show them what kind of a negotiator you are, to show them what kind of business acumen you have, to show them your ethics, to show them your knowledge bank, to show them your trustworthiness, and to show them your personal concern for them as human beings in a transactional deal. To me, I mean, that is your presentation. It should be all of those things, however you articulate, whenever you articulate it, however it happens in that appointment. Those are kind of the essential pieces that people need to say, okay, I'm going to sign and give you this contractual, agreement to work on my behalf. And so whether you use a formal presentation or you just walk in there and you want to make connections, that's the most important thing that should be in your brain, is how do I show and articulate and demonstrate this seller what I'm about, how this transaction is going to go, all of those things. So, it's like Scott said, he had somebody type up this 20-page thing. I think if we all sat down and really broke it down, we'd have probably about 20 pages, all the stuff that goes into what you do before, what you do during, the psychology of it, what you need to make sure you say, all these things. But those core elements tend to be the same. And when you go into enough listing appointments and you have these conversations enough times, you really create your own script. right? Everybody wants a script, and scripting is great, and script practice can help. But ultimately, once you do this enough, you're going to know exactly what you need to say, and you're going to be able to say things a certain way depending on who you're talking to. You know, I've spoken with people, I think all of these, you know, we've mentioned all the reasons. I think Jeff typed, you know, the main reasons that people sell their house. The conversation I'm having with a divorcing couple is completely different than somebody who is a first-time home buyer, and completely different than somebody who's moving out of transitioning out of their home because they can't live with the stairs any longer, or because they have a terminal illness or something like that.
Yep.
At the end of the day, it's how you have the conversation. And the number one thing I heard is you got to listen in order to know how to have that conversation.
Yep. Well said.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So number one tool, if you guys could walk in to every single listing appointment for the rest of your life and only have one thing with you. Okay. And let's just eliminate like the contract, because I certainly hope. And by the way, I'm all about not using paper. I'm all about electronic, digitized, you know, transactional work. But if you are walking into a listing appointment without a printed out listing contract, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. Don't take a listing. Don't bother going. Sorry. I'm really adamant about this. Because the second you say, well, when I get back to the office, I'll send that to you, you've lost the listing, or you've certainly increased your chances of losing that listing. And there's nothing more powerful than being ready and having that paper. Sometimes people need that commitment is connected to the pen. So they may not want to use it. You should give them the choice, but don't walk in without a contract. That's my opinion. You guys can argue. That's good. But
Lexy,
what is the one tool other than a contract that you guys would not want to walk into for the rest of your life? You could have one tool. What would it be? Heather.
Well, I wanted to pause on what you said about walking in with a contract. You don't have to walk in with all 25 pages with the property disclosure, all that. With the one-page listing contract, you can get signed right then and there, and then you can DigiSign the rest. I just want to say that.
Oh, 100%. And I
I
literally mean just the listing contract, not all the disclosures, not all that stuff can happen later.
Yeah.
I always like to use those as kind of a warm up for getting people used to signing stuff digitally, you know, be like, oh, there's a bunch of other stuff that I'll send you, blah, blah, blah. But that, and honestly, you ought to have the seller's property disclosures also.
Team says that's not one page. You guys have a longer listing contract. Ours is one page up here.
Yeah.
So if I'm walking in from
it's more than one page. It's like 5 pages.
Can you send me that? I want to see it. Like seriously, I want to see it. Because ours is one. I want to know what's going on there. But mine, I am not kidding when I said sign in lockbox. Even when I walk in, the first thing I do is I walk over and I ask the seller if I can set my things down, which is usually my purse. And then my little, you know, folder with my whatever, and then my lockbox, and I set it right on top. So I do. I bring my lockbox and my sign to every appointment.
Interesting.
Oh, I see what she's saying. The RMLS. Okay, I still probably would bring one of the pages, not all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Marco, what's your one favorite tool?
If I couldn't bring anything else, then the contract, just the pen to sign the contract.
I like it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's for me, it's more on, and sorry that I'm driving, I have to get to an appointment, but for me, it's more of a, just, it's all in here. So I wanted to add, so whenever I go to my listings, I like to work on myself before the listing. So if I wake up in the morning, I'm going on 2 listing appointments, I'm going to tell myself, okay, Marco, you got 2 listing appointments. You're going to go take 2 listings. You're not just going to go to the appointments. So that for me goes a long way.
That's awesome. So it's mindset.
Mindset, 100%.
And honestly, I believe wholeheartedly that that energy that you carry in with you is what gets projected. And that makes, you know, some people call it law of attraction, some people call it manifesting, whatever it is. But I believe that that energy is critical.
Yeah, that's
I
what I
love
was
it.
going to say is my demeanor would be the one thing that like I can walk in and it took me a long time. And actually, if you are a new agent, we talk about scripts, we talk about all this stuff. You should be practicing your demeanor. Like, what is the energy you're bringing into the room? Like I always, when we sit down, I've taken notes, I'll lean back, I'll cross my legs and just, have this very calm energy. Because really, at the end of the day, that's what people want. They want somebody that's not going to freak out at the level they're about to freak out at. Like, how can you bring that to day one? Because at the end of the day, all of the numbers and all the stuff, it's an interview. Like, do I like you? Do you like me? Is the vibe there? And a lot of that is practiced. Like one of the things, a great exercise if you're a newer agent is sit down with two other people, get calm, get relaxed, and then have those people just throw like zingers at you, curveballs, ask all the dumb questions that we've all dealt with, like
Right.
throw those at you, and you still have to like maintain, think, process, answer them in a way that is articulate and doesn't like freak them out. I talk about with my new people, like go door knock. You go door knock 1,000 doors, there ain't nothing that's gonna like jack you up ever again. Because it's just like,
You can't get rattled after that. Yeah.
no, yeah, go to open houses, do open houses, do door, sit down with your teammates, sit down with your mentor, and have them, get in that space, get in that calm headspace, and then have them just light you up, and can you handle that? Can
I
you
love it.
prepare for it? And you have to do that. Trey Gowdy, who's a senator, and he talked about like, I litigated every trial to the finish before I ever stepped in the courtroom. Like I knew what was going to happen before I ever got in there. And
Yeah.
that was prep work, but it's also your mental game as well.
You know, it's funny. Jeff and I just had dinner with a friend of ours who is a pretty famous actor, and he was talking about he teaches now in his wife is a doctor, and he teaches classes with her in the med school. And I was like, that's really interesting. Well, of course, because if let's just say you're an oncologist and it's literally your job to tell people that they have cancer. I certainly hope that you have practiced that there's been some thought that has gone into that, right? Because in that moment, like with selling a house, they need to feel that you are knowledgeable and they can trust you, that you have compassion and empathy, and that you're not going to get rattled. Because that's when somebody is selling, you're signing a contract to say, here, this is my most important and significant financial thing in my life. Here you go. Or, you're going to treat my cancer. Like you need to feel really comfortable in your knowledge and your ability to take on that transaction, regardless of what it is. And it's your job in that moment to make them feel that. I love it, Craig. That's so a pen, a lockbox, your own demeanor. These are awesome. Siobhan, what's your one thing?
Well, I think it probably stems back to the confidence. So I have a necklace that I wear. It says I'm an effing warrior on it. And I wear it all the time. And I just look at it anytime I'm doubting myself. And I usually flip it over when I'm meeting clients, just so you know, because it literally says that. But yeah, I have that with me. I have, the confidence to to let them know that I am the expert. I'm going to advise them, and I don't get frazzled easily. So I that kind of that conveys when I'm speaking to people and about the process. I always tell them, I know this is a lot. I know this is stressful, but I'm going to take that stress off your shoulders. That's why I'm here. And that seems to really put people at ease.
That's great. I love it. Scott? Your
My one thing I would bring, and I do a lot of the same things. Like like I was going to say, because so much of what I even said, because I haven't taken or had a listing presentation or showed anybody a piece of paper in probably 8 years, just by the way. Because all of the stuff I talked about, or this whole process, I use it for training brokers and agents.
Yeah.
And I know it. Like I know it by heart. I don't have to present it to anybody. And that presentation I was talking about isn't something to show a client. It was actually the wording and the process and the procedure. Even though I used to always take a full binder of everything, and I have an actual slide deck also. I did that one time, and it's somebody, when they called me, they said, please come list my house. And they're very techie. So I said, hey, do you mind if I show you, go through my presentation, my slide deck? They're like, yeah, that'd be awesome. So that's the one time I've done it ever in my career. But to me, all that was like leading to a lot of other things you guys said. It's like complete confidence in knowing you've got it. Like, no problem. Because with all that prep, I have zero worries going and talking to people. I can't wait to get there. And it's like, and I always looked, I know I'm saying more than my one thing, but I always looked at my business as like boxing and MMA, how it's changed to like, or somebody had mentioned ninja selling. My whole office, we religiously did that years ago. There's a bunch of offices here in Southern Oregon that did that because of our stuff, and they went off and started doing it, and they're still doing it, which is an amazing program for referral-based business. It's incredible. But my thought process, and where this leads to the MMA style thing, it's like, yes, I want to be great at boxing, but I want to know every art there is to kick somebody's butt. So it's like, then we got into lead gen, we got into all these other things. But my one thing would be, and actually it has one of those things is still a ninja thing, is like an absorption rate chart that's a visual, and it shows, it's a graph of pendings, solds, price points, and you can actually put a box around here's the price point that is selling. And here's where you're telling me to list yours. You see how it's over here out of that box?
Mhm.
It ain't selling until it gets down into this box. So it was like a visual for people. It's very simple. And then I'd also do my 5x5, which is five actives, 5 pendings, 5 solds. And I'd narrow those down and I'd put them into a program that would show pictures and all the goodies, but it would show them the exact price point. But I also always prepped them with, to me, I always talk to them about what each party in the process controls. And I said, guess what? Neither myself or you control the price. The market controls the price. We don't.
Correct.
So I'm just going to go get you the details. And that's why I said this would be a huge thing for me. All I'm going to do is show you the facts of what the market is telling us.
That's it.
So that's why I would go with that, because that's the bottom line. They have to believe that. And then if they didn't, I would, well, not completely out of hand. I used to not take overpriced listings. Then I got to the point where, you know what? No, I'm just gonna have a good process for that. So I will let them know. They will absolutely know. I think they're wrong, or not wrong, but I think you're high. That sounds weird. But and then
I think you're high
Maybe
and
both.
high.
maybe
You
both.
can't say that in Colorado because
Maybe both. But I would say, yeah, you know what? I'm going to take a list. I'll take your listing, but here's what we're going to do. And this is part of my thing too, is I say, because I get them to agree on price reductions before we ever leave. And there's a way to do it. I do it like if within the first 3 weeks or 2 weeks, we have this many showings, we're too high. We need to drop it in this percentage. And I go, then if we drop it and we go into that next phase, and for that period of time, if we're not getting any showings, then maybe my marketing is the problem, and that's not going to be a problem. So, because I'll show them what I do. And then if there's tons of showings though, and we're not selling, then we need to come down again. And so I have like a 4-step process where it actually maps out the price reductions over a period so that they're already good with. So I don't have to go begging for price reductions. They already understand, like, I'm going to go with what you want, but here's what I believe as a professional for the last 20 years think you should do. And here's what the market tells you should do.
Right.
But we'll try this because your house is special.
Yeah. No, I get it.
And
Sarah, what's your tool, Sarah?
My tool is an open heart. I've noticed that when I walk into an appointment and I leave everything back at home that's stressful or whatever, when I walk through the door with an open heart, everything flows exactly as it's supposed to. I make the connection, the knowledge comes out of my mouth the way it should. And I get the listing, but I only get the listing because I've conveyed to the client that I'm confident, and I have their best interest at heart. So that's through an open heart.
Yep. Yep. And I think if you show up and you're just showing a presentation and that's all you're doing, I honestly think you're just missing the mark, because then people aren't getting the authentic you. They're getting a
Right.
lot of your hard work that's been really well organized and I'm sure is awesome. But if that's the only thing you're doing, they're missing that connection and that feeling of trust. And the only way to do that is really just to kind of, quite frankly, just to know your stuff and to be able to show up, have rapport, and show them confidently that you know your stuff. I love it. So we have about 20 minutes left. It's so amazing how quickly the time goes. If anybody here that's watching has a specific question, would you please put it in the chat and I'll make sure I ask it. But I do want to say, want you guys to say just a quick little thing about follow-up. Because, I mentioned it, and I like the ideal scenario is you show up for the appointment and you take the listing while you're there, right? I mean, that's what everybody hopes. But there are always going to be those times when you don't get the listing in the moment and you have to follow up. What let's try to be not too long-winded, only because I want to make sure I'm leaving room for questions that pop up over here. But what is your follow-up game, guys? Because that's critical. Sarah, you start.
Well, I take it on a case-by-case scenario. I connect with them either by phone, text, email. I've already asked them how they prefer to communicate. So I give them a day or two, and then I check back in with them, ask them if they have any further questions. Usually before then, they've let me know that I have the listing, and they tell me when they'd like to list. So.
Awesome. That's perfect. Scott, how about you? What's your follow-up game?
Similar. I think, just knowing I've already planned that out or asked them what they want. I'm same though. There's hardly any listings I go to that I don't get. Honestly. But I think that's interesting too, because there's tons of people on here and we all get business a different way, right? So if it's a referral, then yeah, you should be getting that listing when you leave, unless you've done something wrong, which most likely you won't. If you're competing, we haven't talked about this, like if you're competing with the listing, then do you want to be first or last, or how's that go? Then it's different, because then they're going to look, you might have 3 people you're talking about competing with. And I think that's super important how you follow up after that. I think it's interesting how Sarah had talked about opening up with her heart. I get it, because I'm like really passionate about business or anything. And so that's kind of like my version of that. And it really is about that. It's like you care about those people, you're passionate about it. And most people tell me, if they don't think I'm too intense sometimes, that like they know I'm into it, man. I want the job. I'm going to do it. And I think that's important that they get that from all of us, because that's the key. And it really is the key. And you only have all that other backup information just in case it goes there, right? You don't use it. You really don't use it. I love it, because everybody's kind of the same. Like, we've done this a long time and we've boiled it down to, we show up. We might bring some backup tools in case they ask, but like I always go walk through the house. I always see, and I always do the whole thing. If I see a picture about something, then I ask them about it. And then the problem is then I usually end up in a conversation that goes a whole different direction, and I let it go, because that's how you get that connection.
Yeah.
And then we're friends.
Yeah.
And it's they forget about everything else most of the time. Then we've skipped all of it. But so that's what I think is interesting about it. It's like you can have I'm a weird guy on the disc. Like I'm a bunch of all of them, which doesn't make sense. But my go-to is just getting in front of people live. That's it. Like if you can do that, you can close a listing.
Yeah. Marco, how about you? What's your follow-up game?
My follow-up, I definitely put everything in my CRM. That's important for me.
Yeah.
Something that I like to do the minute that when I go on a listing appointment, regardless if I take the listing or not, I have my assistant send out a thank you card. A thank you for your time. We throw in a Starbucks card or a gift card. And I'm not very personal sometimes. If I don't click with people, then that's when I have maybe my assistant or my admin step in and see if they can connect with them. Maybe if it's like a single mother that needs to sell her house and I can't connect with her, that's when I use the rest of my team to kind of just work together.
Yeah.
But we're following up. I mean, I like to follow up every other day, just until they're ready.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Siobhan and Craig, what do you guys do?
So for me, I'm trying, you have to gauge urgency.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
like one of the things I do in my thing is it's a calendar, right? I just noticed this one's out of date, but I'll reverse engineer. So like it has 4 questions. When would you like to be in your new home? And then we back it up. All right, I need 60 days for under contract. How much time do you need to prepare? First day on the market. So we back into when their house needs to be on the market. If it's in, like 90 days, 60 days, like I'm going to be like, hey, we need to get going. Do you have any questions? I'm going to send you over the contract so we can get that out of the way. But if it's still 6 months out, then it's like, I'm not going to call them next week and be like, so when do you want to sell your house? Like, so I try and gauge their urgency, and that's a great tool for doing that. The other thing I try and do is bring value. So
Yeah.
for example, when I'm touring their house and I see something like, hey, I noticed the water heater was leaking. Like, can I recommend a plumber for you? Because it's one of those things we're going to get caught out in the inspection. Why don't we go ahead and fix that? And, here's 3 plumbers. You should do that. Hey, the roof's a little old or it looked like it needed some work. Can I send my roofer out to have him give us a pre-inspection on the roof? Like add value, do little things, whether it's like, hey, can I recommend a lender where you're going? Can I find you an EXP agent where you're going,
Right.
and make it 25% of the commission on that side. If you guys aren't doing that, you're missing out on it.
For sure. And plus, honestly, the coordination of buy and sell is really
Yeah.
important. And so if
Oh,
you can
yeah.
articulate that to your client, they're a lot more likely to say, oh, that would be really great if you could connect me with someone on, in Knoxville or wherever they're
Yeah.
going. It's
Yep.
great. I love that.
Yeah, bring value. Bring
Bring
value.
value.
Understand their urgency and their timeline, and then in the interim, bring value. So like you're the only one calling them and giving them what they need.
I love that. Siobhan?
Perfect.
Yeah, I bring value too. I don't like to talk about myself while I'm there. So Todd and I have created a couple of pamphlets, like with our pictures of our family and write-ups about ourselves, and then little things about reviews and what we offer and services. And I just bring this in a folder. I also have a pamphlet of a bunch of like 20 things to do before you sell, like steps. So and I use Chat GPT before I even walk in to create MLS descriptions with a bunch of different styles, marketing campaigns, just showing them SEO optimized marketing campaign. That through Chat GPT, that takes me like 15 minutes before I go. It is.
She just showed me that is freaking brilliant. If you're not
Yeah,
used
that's
to
really awesome.
here's how I'm going to market you. Here's how how it's going to get written up. It's like, I was like, damn, that is brilliant.
You know what? AI makes me kind of nervous, but then when I realized that it could write your listing descriptions for you, I was like, oh my gosh. Okay, I'll handle it then. It's awesome.
All that, and it's all the SEO optimized Facebook posts. I have Instagram in here. I have a YouTube script for a video that's SEO optimized. So it even has emojis in it. So I'm like, because I have lost a listing because I was a little too complacent about the marketing. I'm like, oh, put it on the market, stick a sign in the yard. That's my plan. Obviously it wasn't, but that's all I went into. So now I don't take that for granted, no matter who I'm talking to. I'm like, I also tell Chat GPT to give me 25 unique ways to market the property, and they spit these out, marketing strategies. So it's already done. And I'm like, this is just an example. So all this stuff in here, I'm hoping you'll read through, and then my follow-up is, did you have a chance to go through that? Did you have any questions about what we're doing? And then, again, with the timeline too, I ask them, we can, if this is your timeline, we'll have the cleaners in here next week. Let's get that scheduled right now. Let's have the photographer in the next day, and then just really be proactive about when those are happening to add value. Like, let's get this going now. I already have a plan. I'm just waiting on you.
I love, so Siobhan is talking about, when you think about what she started talking about today, was saying, I really like to respect their time. And then she goes in, she's prepared with information. She can answer questions while she's there. She gets to focus on making the connection and helping fill in the gaps of information for them. And then at the end, it's such a value add to be able to say, and she can show them the marketing materials, which, by the way, brilliant stuff. And I know we have a comment here from G Team, from Joanne, saying, she's so sick of the flowery, fancy descriptions of listings. But here's the thing. We all are, because we're on the agent side, but the client is not sick of that. They expect that. They demand that. And when we're like there, it boasts, lots of light through 50,000 windows in the living room alone, blah, blah, blah. Like, we all hate that stuff, but how great is it to have a tool now that helps us with that? But back to Siobhan, I love then she says she doesn't have to be uncomfortably braggadocious in those moments. She doesn't have to talk crap about other agents and say how good she is. She just says, I really wanted to spend my time focused on your needs, but I know you want information about me and what we do. So I'm going to leave you with this information, and then I'm going to follow up with you, so that I'm sure we can answer any questions. I love how, do you see those are all building blocks that fit into the needs and the time parameter that you have in one tiny little appointment. That's high impact, high value, and gives you a really great entree for that follow-up. Because if you don't get the listing in the moment, you gotta have a good reason that's meaningful to follow up. Otherwise, you're kind of dead in the water, because you're just like, so then you're just giving them, digital email commission breath, right? Did I get it? Did I get it? Do you want to work with me? No, it's more like, hey, I did some more research on kind of where you were thinking, looked deeper into some of the comps, and here's what I found. I think we can list at 800, but again, we're going to have to, blah, 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 whatever it is, but just come back with value, but make sure, like a good pool player, if you've ever played pool, give yourself a good leave.
Mhm.
If you don't leave an open door to follow back on, to circle back around to for follow-up, it's going to come across really like commission breath. And Craig just had a great session on that. So, Heather, what's your follow-up game? Oh, you're muted, my dear.
Sorry. We have great questions in the comment section, so I want to be quick. So I have 3-part follow-up. One is I send a thank you card immediately when I leave the neighborhood. I literally have it written before I even leave, and I drop it in the neighborhood lockbox. I don't always finish it, because I might want to add something like, I loved your dog, or your kids are so cute, whatever.
Right.
And then I go to the follow-up phone call. The follow-up phone call has to have value, by the way. So when they're giving you that tour of the home, there's something in that where they could use some of your expertise, your connections, your knowledge. So that phone call includes that. And then lastly, I set the appointment for me to come back.
Nice.
That's it.
Love that. Yeah. That's scheduling an appointment from another appointment, right? That's really important. Okay. So, best phrase to close the presentation. How do you ask them for their business before you leave? Scott, go. What's your one phrase? How do you ask for the business before you leave?
Honestly, I don't really have a go-to one phrase at all, because by the time I leave, it's done. I mean, honestly, if I don't feel like it's done, then I'm trying to like figure out what's missing, or what they're thinking or feeling, or what's going on. I don't know. I never honestly really deal with that. I'm not a hard closer at all. It's usually closed by the time we're leaving.
Exactly. I love
so I don't have one. But I might have one, but it would come from all the conversations and the whole interaction and whatever happened there. But there's so many good things on this. This is like a 2-day class, you know that, right? I mean, everybody's like, there's so much, because everything anybody said, I wrote little notes of little things like that I do for that. And like Craig had a lot of great things, and it's like all of us did, but it's like I go, oh, okay, here's what I do with that, and that helps. It just there's always I guess the thing is getting enough people like us, if there's new people, like to get those things. It's like, hey, if this happens, here's what we do. Like
Yep.
the one was when we were talking about commissions, or if they start to talking about commissions, and I always tell them, I said, that's a crazy one. I go, I pretty much stick to my commissions. We deserve it. I go, but I'll tell you what, wouldn't look very good if I lost my first negotiation, would it? To you. Like, how's that look for me being your negotiator? Like, I can't lose this negotiation, or why would you hire me?
Yeah.
And so it's like, if it gets there, I go, that was my one I always do. And they kind of go, huh, you're kind of right. And it sort of sometimes just kills it. But there's always these little things. If they say something, I don't consider them objection handlers.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's just the way to take it so you don't get the objection handler. I think that's my whole presentation is about avoiding those.
Yeah.
Presenting the right things. But anyways, and also one thing about real quick about I always tell them, I know you're interviewing me, and I go, you know what? You probably haven't heard this before. And I always say things that I know no other agent has told them or said something. I go, I'm actually interviewing you also. I go, I've been doing this a long time, and I don't like working with people that we don't get along. I go, so this is an interview going both ways. And I make it kind of comical sometimes, but it's real. Like,
Sure.
I don't want to work with everybody.
Sure. Marco, I know you have an appointment. Awesome. He's working it. What's do you have a line or anything specific that you say to kind of close people?
Is it like before we get the listing agreement signed or after?
I mean, let's go with before, since it's something that maybe kind of helps push them over the edge.
I go over what they're wanting to do. So if, let's say they're wanting to move down to New Mexico, then I'll say, okay, well, before we can get you to New Mexico, we're gonna have to do X, Y, Z. And I know you're looking to get there in 3 months, which means we got to start working on listing the home now. So before I can get to work, let's get this paperwork out of the way. And that gives me permission to get to work for you.
So
and get your home sold.
there's an assumptive close there. Then Marco's kind of just saying like, hey, we've covered all the information. I've heard you. I am totally solid with what your needs are. I have work to do. I need you to sign this. Let's get going. I love it because you know what that says. It's not, he reiterates that he's heard them, but he's hungry. I mean, he's ready to work for it. That's huge. I love it. It's basically asking for it without asking for it.
Absolutely. And I always like to listen to what they're really looking to do and where they're looking to get to and the big why.
Yeah.
Because that unlocks everything.
Yeah, it's huge. Anybody else who has a close?
My favorite one is, are you comfortable with ... What is that? Are you comfortable with me drafting the docs, get those sent over? Are you comfortable with me contacting the plumber? Sometimes I'll have a list like, okay, here's a few things we got to do to get ready. Are you comfortable with me drafting the docs? Are you comfortable with me recommending a plumber? Are you comfortable with me finding you an agent? And it's a really soft close, but if they're like, well, there's like, well, okay, tell me what part of that you're not comfortable with. I want to make sure I'm fully hearing everything you're saying. But it's a really soft close, but it's a great way for them, because most times they'll be like, yeah, I'm comfortable with that. And then it's like, great, I've got my list of things I'm going to do. I'll be in contact with you shortly. We'll get all this taken care of and get this house sold.
Love it. Love it. Sarah, you kind of waved your hand there.
Well, normally things have gone really well. I thank them for their time, tell them they have a lovely home. I let them know that I wish them the best. If they decide to list with another agent, I let them know I'll try to sell it on the buying side, so that they know I really do care about the sale of their home.
Wow, that's a good one. I like it. Heather, you put something in here. But let's see. Thank you. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to put my experience to work and get you on your way to your new home. I love that. It's again, calling it into perspective, what are they doing here? And that's that they have a next chapter. You're key to helping them get to that next chapter. I love it. Siobhan, what's your close?
I'm kind of with Scott. I don't really have a close other than here's what I have to offer. I'd love to work with you, but I just want to say real quick for the Chat GPT haters. I honestly, I don't know how many of you read listing descriptions for homes your buyers want to see, but I really don't. But like you said, Lexy, the sellers read them and the clients and buyers read them. So my perspective is I'm going to hire a professional to take your photos of your house. I'm not going to walk around with my phone, to clean your home, to stage it. Why am I not hiring a professional to write the listing description? I'm not an English major. Most realtors are very far from it, and you can't even get punctuation correct. So, or spelling, for God's sake, at least spell check.
They don't even follow the rules, the laws. If I see another, you got to see this one, I'm always like, you guys, that's illegal. You cannot use that verbiage. You can't.
Right.
Don't do it anymore. Stop.
Perfect for your
If you're
family.
putting the word see, don't put that. You can't say you got to see this one.
Yeah.
Use visit.
Something more
I don't know
on-
why I call your broker.
Something more on what Siobhan just said, because I agree. I do that too. I use Chat GP. I hate listening the verbiage. Like
Worst
I
part
am
of taking a
horrible at
listing.
it. And so I definitely use Chat GPT, but I actually, she probably does the same thing, but I do this and it's worked great for me because I hate writing descriptions. I always at the end say, hey, you know what? One thing I'd love to have you do is please write up like all the things that made you buy this home and what you love about it and what you want to explain. Because I always tell them, I go, I need to know everything you know and how you feel about your home. And so I get a nice little description written up by my buyer or sellers. And I love that because a lot of times I've written up a description and then they complain and they hate it. Right. So I'm like, I figured out a way to avoid that. But then I'll put those items into Chat GPT to like formulate it. And then I'll give it it's not a very long description because most of my guys will write this book, but we take the best parts. So I already have it from them and then it's written professionally and it works really well.
Yeah, no, I get it. So, we're at time and I really take that seriously, and I can't thank you guys enough, our panelists, for sharing your experience, your perspective, your wisdom. My main goal for today was to kind of debunk the super scary part of taking a listing. I think most of us like people. Most of us want to help people sell a house, and most of us know what we're doing when it comes to selling a house. If you can impart those things, you've got a listing. It's not that spooky scary. And none of these people are spooky scary. Maybe Craig a little, but no, I'm just kidding. But for real, it's just being nice, having a heart, being a good listener. How many of you guys, I think this is such a valuable topic, and I think we have so much expertise with many, many people, this group included, but how many of you guys would be interested in more of these kinds of sessions, but where you guys get to ask a lot of the questions? Please put yes in the, yeah, I am. I want to hear, because, I think what makes you the best listing agent that you can be is to hear what other people do and say, oh, wow, I don't do that, but that's awesome. Or, yeah, that would not work for me, because there's just a lot of stuff out there that you don't know about. And it's really cool when you hear someone else talk about it and you're like, oh, that would really work. And even if it's just another tool that you put in your tool belt that, maybe you get some hysterical seller and you're not sure, but then you think back, oh, I remember what Sara said, that's what helps. So we'll put something else together here. Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you guys for being on our panel. We are so blessed with the most amazing leaders who are willing to just pour into the community with your expertise. We'll have you back. You get all my love today and every day, but happy Valentine's Day to everyone. And I will make sure that when we post this in the communitycenter.com, we will also post the information. Craig, Scott, others, if you guys have anything, I'd love to have something of value that you guys use, that we can post up with this video so people can use it and make it their own. Thank you. Love you guys. Thanks for being here.
Everybody.